We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners, Burke Britton Financial Partners. This is episode number 88 of the Finances podcast. Can you believe we're up to 88, Ben?
Survived.
We've survived.
We keep listening and the family keep listening. We might get to 100.
Well, I've already had a request for a guest for our 100th.
Special guest.
Oh, it's not specials. Luke Massey wants to come here. He said because he named the podcast, it was his, and he edits the podcast, he should come on for a number 100. But he's got a spot. Fat and Ginger have got a spot on K-Rock. And
could be a bit of a collab.
Yeah, a bit of a collab. Yeah, we might get a bit of airtime on K-Rock. Why not?
At least we know, Luke, you've actually listened to every single one of these.
It takes out all of our ums. For anyone that's listening to this and thinks, oh, geez, Ben and Jay speak really well. Yeah, thanks, Luke. He's taken out every pause, every swear word, every client name that Peter drops in the middle of a podcast.
No wonder he's on holiday all the time because of all the time he's put into editing this.
All right, well, let's start. We were chatting last night and then today about a couple of client scenarios, and we weren't sure exactly where this would go, but we thought we'd just sort of talk about it briefly, and because it's fairly topical. I mean, people selling properties, we talked on a couple of previous podcasts about, people hold a lot of their wealth in property. There is obviously going to be a fairly significant transition of wealth in property. There's people moving into aged care. There's a lot of reasons why people want to sell a property and maybe repurpose those funds into something else. And so the conversation was really around some of the decision points and some of the things that you're confronted with when it's time to sell a current place or a property or some land, maybe move into aged care, retirement village, or downsize into another property. So where do you want to take this one, Ben?
I suppose there's the need, but there's also then sometimes the desire to not sell it. Like you have clients who there's a family attachment to that property. So sometimes the non-financial bias that comes into those decisions as well. And I think our job, which again, it's not writing, we were talking about this before, not writing in documents and SOAs, but talking about the pros and cons of both sides of these decisions, weighing it up from the financial side, the non-financial side, to help people make a decision about what they do next. Yeah. So there's 1,000 different reasons to sell and there's 1,000 to hold.
Some of them are emotional, some of them are financial, some of them are lifestyle, some of them you can really be objective about them, some of them are very subjective. And I don't think my in-laws will mind me talking about this. I won't name them, but everyone knows who they are.
Shouldn't be too hard to work backwards.
But yeah, they're in the process of selling their place, moving into a retirement village, and some of those same decision points about, well, the emotional attachment. So you've got kids that maybe think there might be a different approach required for their parents. You've got the parents wanting to do one thing, or maybe a couple of things. There might be some options of downsizing, moving in with your family, living in a retirement village. And then one of the other things that you have is sort of the expectations when you actually sell a property, that all of a sudden, when the reality of selling something comes to the fore, you start to think, well, this is what I need to sell it for, and you start to put different expectations like, oh, this is what I have to get.
Whenever people start, when they say to me, we have to get this much, I always get a little bit worried about it. It's a trigger. And again, sometimes it's actually, again, you unpack that and there is a reason why they have to get that. But maybe it's just poor verbiage. But when they start with that, it's often not in the right place. They've probably got their order of operations a little bit around the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think that one of the ways to alleviate that, and I always say we've talked about it previously, we do repeat a lot and it's important that we do, is that it's important that you start those conversations early. Like you actually start, if you're contemplating, thinking, actually, we're likely to want to move, the sooner you can start to talk about that and work out what you need, yes, but also what you're likely to receive, what the value of your property's worth, and maybe in the example that you were talking about earlier before off air, what are some of your other options? Like, because when you're about to sell, it also presents a number of other options. Like, should we sell? Could we borrow? Should we retain?
Subdivide, develop.
Yeah.
I think, again, time is the one thing that always becomes the issue. So if you start planning it well in advance, and let's say, again, most of the time, we don't generalize, there's going to be at least a couple of kids. So let's say there's 3 kids. Financially unlikely all 3 are going to be in a situation where they could just jump onto something and just buy it off their folks the next week. Maybe 1 is, maybe 2. Again, this is sort of talking about we've got a long-term property that maybe needs to, or there's a desire for it to be retained in the family. I've got a couple of these at the moment. And for one of them, there just simply is no option where they can probably keep it. Like there's 2 kids, neither of them in a position, strong desire from all parties to keep this property. It's been 40 years in the family. It's very hard because they haven't mapped it out any other way. And there's been unfortunate circumstances where they just haven't been in a position for that. Property prices have gone up significantly. So you've gone from maybe it being, a bit of a push but doable to completely unattainable for these people now because the property location, the scale of it, it becomes a $2 million property, even though it's probably still needs work on it. And that's not that uncommon now.
Yeah.
So it's a big leap from you to now just go, we'll buy mum and dad's place and move into it when the time comes and free up some cash for them to go into care or for them to downsize or do whatever they need to do, which then people start playing in really dangerous areas around gifting or depreciated value sales, and which the spin-off of all of those, I don't know how many times I've been asked about, could we just transfer it, or what about a trust, or maybe we could do it in state. There's always options. Sometimes those things work, but very rarely. And without good advice, probably from accountant, solicitor, financial planner, you're going to get into all sorts of trouble.
Yeah. I've got a situation, just thought about, I've got a situation with farming clients where ideally they would succeed the farm land to one of the kids who's likely to work the farm. However, the parents, they would ideally almost gift it to that child. However, they need the proceeds to go to the next place. And if they did just hand it over, change the title, they also have implications from a Centrelink point of view. So there's all of these things have ramifications. It's not until you actually sit back and think, okay, what are the second, third, fourth order consequences of making that decision? And some of them are not issues now, but they become issues later. Like even from an estate planning point of view, if you don't have the equalisation of your estate sorted out and you decide to, hand over ownership or title change to one of the kids and don't think how the balance will be funded out in the future, it creates headaches that you're much better off dealing with those early on.
And they become scalable issues, especially with property. It's chunky, it's not liquid. The difference between, you got 3 kids and you help one of them with a $50,000 sort of, living will gift or something to help them get into a home. That's easy. Like you can manage that in the distribution. You can, document it pretty clearly. You start carving out value land with high values, also valuations of land
when do you
differ greatly. Yep. Like you've got someone saying it's worth 1.2 and the next person saying it's worth 2 million. It's an opinion. Like unless it actually changes hands for an amount of money, there's always going to be arguments about those sorts of things. Again, it all just comes back to good communication, planning, and making sure everyone's on the same page and knowing these things will happen. Like we're going to see more of this. You got properties that people have lived in for, I say 40 years. Some of them are longer. Like some of them are 50s plus. Like that was traditionally what people did. They bought a house when they got married, bought a house, and they stayed there until they were no longer about, or they had to go into care. And there's a lot of those people. We've got a lot of those clients where we're having these conversations, and sometimes they don't want to, but deep down they probably know they need to have those conversations early.
Yeah, definitely. That again, I suppose the message is there's multiple decision points when you're looking with that transition of property. Again, from do you need the capital? Do we retain and develop? Do we succeed it to children? Do the children fund it out? If it's retained, is it appropriately noted in your estate plan? All of those implications are ones that are much better off dealing with. Like when's the best time to plant a tree? Yesterday. You need to have started yesterday. If you haven't already done it, the next best time is right now.
The other side of it, and I actually probably came into this thinking we would talk about it in a different light, which is probably typical. We just ramble off on different things. But like sometimes people are obsessed with getting, like looking or waiting for the best offer ever. Like, let's say they want to list their property for
Oh yeah.
800,000, and there might be one person in the country who'll pay 9, and they think they're going to wait till they turn up and pay it instead of taking 875 or 8. Maybe it's 8. Like, there's going to be a big differential on that. But so they go, okay, we're going to wait. No, we're going to be stubborn. We're going to really dig our heels in. We'll wait for that person to come with that offer. I know it's worth that because, again, emotion usually gets in the way of a good decision. What opportunity cost does that cost you? So, have you had to take out a bridging loan? Have you had to withdraw down on your investments that could have been generating you income? Is there Centrelink implications? Is there additional costs in aged care bonds that you haven't been able to fund? Are family members helping you out? So I think one of our strengths is just with the helicopter view going, all right, well, there's the cost of that, and that. So you're going to wait an extra 6 months to try and get an extra 20 grand, knowing that it's most definitely going to cost you 15 in interest costs. And you go, so you're right, you're going to risk everything for maybe 5,000, and you put your life generally financially on hold waiting for that outcome. So again, we can step back from those things, do some numbers, talk about it, and help rationalize those little bits and pieces.
That's a good example. I think that idea of sort of target fixation, where someone just is so focused on the prize or what, the value that they have to get, that it's very, very difficult for them to actually step back and see the opportunity cost. And again, particularly if you're moving like out and then into the market, maybe you need those proceeds. So while you're waiting to get a better price on your property, the property potentially that you're moving into or you need to purchase is also going up in value. Maybe you've got some holding costs, some interest costs, or maybe that money is not invested. You could have had that sitting parked somewhere earning a rate of return. So yeah, it's not until you actually sit and think about all of those implications to sit outside of just, I need to get that value for my house because that's what I need, when you start to really see the value of seeking some advice.
I think we're likely to see many more options. I don't like to use the word schemes, but different options available for people to extract value from their assets, though. Like, as we move through this phase, we're likely to see, and the government have sort of flagged it already and started to do some things with, they won't call it a reverse mortgage, but they've got their own system that sort of mimics that as well. We're going to see more of those options come online. So again, maybe there will be more flexibility around retention of those properties and estating of it and things like that. But again, until they're right in front of us and sort of tested, at the moment, there's going to be some tough decisions, and some properties will get sold that families don't want to sell. That's probably the bottom line. And unfortunately, people need to move. You have to just step through that, as cold as that sounds. Unfortunately, the rules and regulations will not, capture emotions.
Yeah, they do not. Anything else on this front that we need to cover off on?
I think we'll probably talk about this a lot more, I think, in years to come and months to come. And I think it's one of the biggest things. You're selling most likely your most valuable asset, and you tie your most valuable asset in dollar terms with your most prized possession emotionally. It's going to cause some issues, isn't it? So, like, we deal with this all the time. It's something that nearly every meeting you do talk about your client, your home, and what's your plans for it. Some people don't have those long-term ambitions. It's like 5 years, 10 years. I've lived in 15 houses. I don't care. Others have long-term. This is where I want to be, buried, some of them will say. So it's going to keep coming up.
It is. I can't remember the exact amount. I think we mentioned it in one of the previous podcasts. There's something in the order of, was it $1.5 trillion of properties actually going to transfer over the course of the next couple of decades. It's a significant amount of Australians' wealth, and there's lots of decisions to be made there. And if you think, listen, I'll worry about it later, you think about how quickly the last 10 years of your life went. And we're not very good at actually judging time and thinking how we'll be in 10 years' time to make one of those decisions. So get on the front foot, start talking about it with your family, with us.
Maybe become a real estate agent.
Maybe. Thought about that once. I don't think I'll do that. No slide on any of the real estate agents we've had on the podcast. All right, that's it. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jake.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility. Do your homework. Ask questions and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britain Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.